When I was a fourth grade teacher, I remember sitting in the teacher's lounge and hearing a teacher tell this story about how a kid was misbehaving in her class and she called his grandmother right from class in front of all of the other students and told the grandmother what the kid was doing. And then the grandmother said, "Let me talk to him." She puts the kid on the phone, and in front of the whole class, the kid is just like, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am." And you can hear the grandmother yelling at him from the phone. And he puts down the phone and goes back to his seat. And whatever he was doing that day, he sure never did that again. And since things were not going great in my fourth grade classroom, this story was just music to my ears. It's like, imagine that you could take the biggest troublemaker in your class and just have everybody watch him fall into line.
Wow.
Now, at some point in my career teaching high school, I got my own version of this prize winning, cinematic, call the kid's mom from the classroom story. And it's fantastic. Okay, what happened was I had this student who regularly skipped my class. And because my classroom was on the second floor, I would actually be able to watch him skateboard down the street and go into his house. And one day, I called his mom while I was watching him skateboard toward his house. And I narrated his entire journey in real time. And when he got home, he walked in the door and his mom was waiting for him, still on the phone with me. It was awesome. I want to acknowledge how much joy it brings me still to tell this story, and how much joy I'm sure it brought to that teacher in the teacher's lounge when I was a fourth grade teacher. And there is nothing wrong with that. I very much enjoy sharing that skateboard story because it's a win for me, and teachers like having a win story every now and then, especially a cinematic win story. But part of what makes it such a cinematic win story is that I don't share the boring background details. One of which is that I talked to this mother multiple times about this kid's attendance. So she had been expecting a call more or less like this. I already had told her that I watch her son skateboard home. She was kind of waiting to ambush him. Also, this kid's attendance didn't really get tremendously better after this incident. In the case of the teacher's lounge story where the teacher called this kid's grandmother from class, it's probably also important to know that this teacher knew the kid's grandmother from church and they had known each other for years. If someone is just telling a story like this to entertain an audience, these details aren't important, and in fact, they kind of make the story less fun to tell. But if your listener is a teacher who's trying to mine these stories for teaching strategies, these details are crucial because trying to recreate these stories can absolutely backfire for another teacher who's operating without knowing all of the details. The truth about whipping out your phone during class and calling a student's home is that 99% of the time, it is not a good idea. The most likely outcome is that no one answers the phone, but some other pretty likely outcomes are that the class on your end of the line is embarrassingly loud, or that you hand the phone to the kid and the kid basically talks his way out of trouble in front of the entire class and sits back down with a smirk, and you are the one who lost in front of everyone. Your troublemaking student wants to save face just as badly as you do. So unless they are really scared of that parent, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to try to make it look like they didn't get in that much trouble. This has different implications if you're the one giving advice or the one receiving advice. But basically, if someone is describing a daring and cinematic move that worked out in their classroom, think twice before assuming it will work out in your classroom. And if you are a teacher that has a fantastic cinematic story about one of your wins, please do feel free to tell it. You deserve this. But if you know the person listening is thinking of you as a role model in this case, try to anticipate some of the likely exceptions or share those little details that maybe make it a little bit less of a heroic story, but can keep it from backfiring big time in somebody else's classroom. My name is Roxana Eldon. I run a series of online courses called the Maintain and Stay Sane program for teachers. This video is part of a series I'm creating on good advice, bad advice, toxic positivity, and toxic negativity. And you will find that playlist linked below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.